This year I became an accredited film reviewer, and as such, went to a lot of movies, more than my usual average. And yes, I will provide a link in the description to my written film reviews. It was actually difficult to put a top 10 list together, but here are the films that most impressed me this year. So, as always, let's start at number 10. Gone Girl. This has all the trademarks of a David Fincher film, with a coldness running throughout, and his skilled direction is certainly an important part in making this an involving story. However, I think what elevates the film is Gillian Flynn's intelligent screenplay. She has an impressive way with dialogue, and her use of social commentary regarding how the media handles certain cases, as if they are part of the forensic team, is quite biting. Add in the twists and turns of the story, and this is quite a captivating tale, where everyone's kind of guilty in their own way. For number 9, I went for something just as newsworthy, Citizenfour. Laura Poitras could have done this documentary in a matter of ways, but she went for the simple approach, and that's part of its success. A lot of the movie is basically Edward Snowden in a hotel room, and yet I never found it dull. A lot of that is because Poitras doesn't shove a message down our throats. He just presents the facts and lets us decide whether he's a hero or a traitor. That third act is especially great, as it roll jumps between Snowden, journalist Glenn Greenwald, and various governments as the information is revealed to the world. It's almost like a spy film, as Snowden plans his escape from Beijing and the authorities. And number 8 is a movie about the man who is kind of the reason you're watching me on a computer right now. The Imitation Game. Around the end of the year, we get our fair share of biopics with awards possibly coming their way. However, The Imitation Game does not feel like the typical award-searching biography. A large reason for that is because it doesn't have the usual story structure of this happened and this happened and that happened. It feels like a fully realized story, rather than bits and pieces of Alan Turing's life. The fact that Turing is a very fascinating individual is another reason. A brilliant mathematician and quite an introvert, we see his struggles and his patience as he tries to break the Enigma code. A lot of scenes are basically people hunched over desks solving codes and basically failing a lot of the time. And yet it's all very gripping and tense. Benedict Cumberbatch's performance as Turing is fantastic, showing all of his tics and nuances while also portraying him as a human being. What happened to him was especially tragic, and it's great such a movie exists to tell the story. At number 7, we have a more whimsical look at wartime Europe. The Grand Budapest Hotel. Now, the first time I saw it, I liked it, but I found it lacked a bit of focus. However, on a second viewing, I was able to better get into the vibe Wes Anderson was going for. In many ways, this movie is actually more animated than Fantastic Mr. Fox was. While on the initial watch, I thought only Gustav and Zero storylines were fun, I eventually got wrapped up in everyone's subplots on rewatch. The script is hilarious, the visuals are stunning, and Ralph Fiennes is delightfully playing up in the lead role. Like a lot of Anderson's work, there's a really nostalgic charm to the production, and it's yet another reason he continues to be a filmmaker whose movies are worth anticipating. My number 6 pick is something that brought back a classic monster with style. Godzilla. The reaction to this reboot of the famous city-destroying monster was definitely mixed, as some thought it was lacking in monster fights and Bryan Cranston, and those opinions are certainly valid. However, I thought Gareth Edwards delivered an exciting adventure that rocked my socks off. It's clear how fond he is of the original, and I liked how he showed the major repercussions of giant monsters stomping around. And even though Godzilla only appeared in bits and pieces, I found that effective, as it made when he did show up that much more special and heart-pounding. I especially have to commend the cinematography, which made it seem like the audience was a part of the action. In many ways, Aaron Taylor Johnson was a blank slate to project ourselves into his situation, hence the multiple POV shots. I found the whole movie to be a rollicking ride that made for a great summer blockbuster. My number 5 pick also opened in the summer, although it was a much smaller production. Begin Again. Charming is the best word to describe this movie. With a fantastic soundtrack and a genuine heart, I got completely wrapped up in the story of a young musician who puts together an album on the streets of New York City. This has been a great year for Keira Knightley, and she is really allowed to let loose in this film, and who knew she was such a good singer? It's a story that's heartwarming, but doesn't shy away from the heartbreak and disappointment that life unfortunately brings our way. However, it's a movie about the power of artists, and collaboration, with each character nicely developed and drawn. Plus, how could I not love a film where the leads praise Randy Newman? And number 4 is a film that has an entirely different outlook on show business. Birdman. A satirical look at what actors might go through when they become so attached to a previous role, Birdman captured my attention from the first frame and never let go. It's constantly moving, and the credit goes to both Alejandro González Iñárritu's careful direction and smart screenplay, and to Emmanuel Lubezki's stunning cinematography. He's clearly the go-to cameraman for long takes with nary a cut in sight. Birdman also has some of the best performances of the year, with Michael Keaton showing he's a more layered actor than we may think, and Edward Norton even steals the spotlight from him on a number of occasions. I got so wrapped up in this world, and the themes are done thoughtfully without hitting you over the head. It's an offbeat film, but one that has a lot to wrap your head around, and it leaves you thinking about its ending long after you see it. Artistic types are almost a theme on my list this year, as I continue to show with my number 3 choice, Big Eyes. Unlike most people, I think Tim Burton has been on a hot streak since 2003, with each film being imaginatively thought out with a lot of creativity and fun ideas. Big Eyes is probably one of the best he's ever done, as it explores the life of Margaret Keane. Burton does a superb job of making the funny absurdities of Walter Keane's desperation to prove her paintings are his own, and the sadness and pain that came from keeping the secret for so long. Like any Burton film, the film is really stunning, but it's the smart script and the fascinating characters that elevate the material. Amy Adams is fantastic, and Christoph Waltz shows how full of dimensions Walter was. Interesting enough, both this and Birdman have notable critic characters, except in this case the art critic actually has kind of a point. This was another wonderful movie from Tim Burton, and as always, I look forward to the next one he does. Speaking of directors, whose work I anticipate, number 2 might be a controversial pick considering its reception. Men, Women, and Children. This film got maligned and was a box office dud when it came out, but I absolutely loved it, and thought Jason Reitman did an amazing job at looking how technology almost runs our lives. Each little story was emotional and well told, my favorite involving the sweet relationship between Ansel Elgort and Caitlin Dever. And yes, Adam Sandler is in it and reminds us that, oh right, he does know how to act. The MVP of the cast is Judy Greer as a mother who thinks she's helping a daughter, but is she really? The script is smart, and the visual flourishes of Reitman's direction are wonderfully done. It's another example of how he does a great job at tapping into both the dramatic and funny parts of ordinary people. I hope this is the kind of movie that years down the road will find a more appreciative audience. And my number 1 favorite film of 2014 is The Lego Movie. This is my number 1 of the year, not only because it's incredibly funny, not only because it's so vibrantly animated, and not only because the pace keeps you on your seat and excited for the entire ride. This is in my top spot because Phil Lord and Christopher Miller made a film that hit me on a personal level. I've always been a supporter of creativity and never letting anybody block your imagination, and Lego is the greatest toy of all time because of how much they champion that. This movie completely understands that mission statement, and the result is a brilliant satire on going against the normality of everyday life. Think outside the box. Be a master builder. While yes, sometimes it is important to follow the instructions, it's okay to spill all the bricks onto the floor and go all out there. That the characters are well-rounded and likable adds to that. And where it goes into the finale especially tipped this from being an amazing ode to Lego to something really special. So those are my top 10 of the year. Feel free to disagree and let me know in the comments what your favorites are. And I'll see you tomorrow as I count down my least favorite films of 2014.